Chances are you live in a city with some kind of bike share or scooter share system, and I'm willing to bet that that system probably kind of sucks. Well, today's video is about how to take that bike share system from meh to great. Hey everybody, I'm Tom and this is Shifter, a channel about urban cycling, bike commuting, and the ways we get around our cities. If you like this video, please consider subscribing, becoming a Shifter member, or checking out my brand new bike commuting course. There are links in the description down below. So I'm not riding my usual bike today. I am on a bike share bike. I've been lucky enough in the last couple of years to try out systems in more than a dozen cities in North America and Europe. And when you do that, you start to notice that bike share systems are not created equal. Plus, I live in a city with a bike share system that might best be described as unambitious. So I feel like I have pretty good perspective on this. But I've also been diving into the research and there's been a ton of academic work. And I also wanted to include a city where bike share works, like a model to aspire to. And for me, the best bike share system that I know of is the Bixi system in Montreal. And today we've got someone who's spent months researching his own YouTube series on what makes Bixi work. Here is today's special guest.
Hey, my name is Tosan and I'm with The Place Effect, a YouTube channel all about urbanism. And today I will be providing a case study, a positive case study about Bixi and how it avoids the pitfalls that Tom will be mentioning. Just think of me as your Bixi correspondent.
Mistake number one is thinking this is a question of either docked or dockless systems. And there are basically two kinds of bike sharing systems. In the docked systems, the bikes are kept in a docking station. You, as a user, approach the station, usually using an app, you unlock a bike, you ride it around, and you return it to another docking station. A dockless system, as the name implies, does not have the docking stations. The bikes are just left in the city, sometimes in designated areas within the city. As a user, you use the app, unlock the bike, ride it around, and drop it off somewhere else. When you think of companies like Bird or Lime, yes, these are the private dockless systems. Now, at first, I thought a lot of this would come down to whether one system was superior over the other, whether docked was better than dockless. I mean, in the early stages, cities usually had one or the other. But today you see a lot of cities that have both systems, both a municipally run one and a private system. And I've come around to the idea that it's not the type of system that defines its success. It's all the other things that are about to come on this list. So what works in Montreal? Let's check in with our Bixi correspondent.
If you actually look at Bixi, you probably think of it as a dock system. I mean, there are docks that you put your bikes in. But actually, it's more of a dockless or hybrid system because the stations themselves are actually solar powered. And this is actually was a really big leap in bike share technology because it allows you to have the flexibility of a dockless system by being able to put stations wherever the demand needs it, but also you have the orderliness of a docked system by having places to place the bike when it's not in use. And these stations can be set up in as little as 30 minutes. So, you know, when there's big festivals or when there's concerts going on, there's also shifting around the stations, reducing the amount of docks and moving the docks elsewhere. That way, the system can flex to the demands of the users actually using the system. So really Montreal has the best of both worlds, and I think it's a system that I think most bike share systems should adopt.
Mistake number two, building a system for the wrong users. I live in Calgary here in Western Canada, and the system we have here is only private operators. There's no municipal involvement, and it's mostly scooters. There's just a few bikes scattered around, but mostly it's scooters. This in itself, I don't think is a problem. I have no problem with scooters, but I do think the system is not living up to its potential. And I think the biggest reason is because it's not being geared towards the right users. Several research papers found that the most common use of bike share systems is in commuting. And this is especially true when it's combined with transit. Bike shares often fix what's called the last mile problem. So transit can be amazing in getting you most of the way to your destination, but that last mile, it's not there, and that's where bikes can fill that gap. Bike share systems can really fill that last mile gap. The problem is that in many cities, the systems are just not set up for commuters. What I see here is that the system seems to be, not completely, but mostly made for fun. It's to hit up those people who are out on a Friday night and they're getting around and they're using the bike share, scooter share system to do it. Now, there's nothing wrong with this, but when the research shows that most of the use is for commuters, I think that's one of the reasons the system here is not meeting its potential. There's another problem within this as well. The research shows that the most common user of bike share is young men. Now, you might think this is because you have to be fit and active and maybe a little reckless or something like that, but that's not really the case. Young men especially over-index on the type of people who are commuting downtown. The system is not specifically thinking about other people who are not commuting, and that tends to be older people, families, more women, and so we're missing those types of people in the bike share systems as well. So if a system is built only around recreation or for fun, and if it's only built around commuters, I think we're still not reaching all the potential users that it could reach.
When it comes to building any product, making sure that it's built for its user is an incredibly important process. And I think the city of Montreal just did this excellently. This system was built by the city. They went to extensive lengths to building a bike and a bike share system that actually serves its users. From the smaller basket to making sure that people don't end up riding in it, making sure that it was built out of aluminum, so it was rust proof, making also a bike that's robust, that can stand up to the beating that a public bike is going to take. This wasn't a bike that's shipped over from, Timu on a tanker. This was built here in Montreal, and you really can tell by the build quality of the bike. The step-through design and the upright riding position makes it easy to get on and off, and also navigate traffic. All these little things makes the user feel like this is a well-considered product and something that isn't an afterthought.
Mistake number 3, failing to build a system that fits the city. The worst way to build a bike share system is for a city to just throw some bikes on the street and just say, have at her. To make a system that really works, the city has to be built with the city in mind, and every city is a little bit different. Of course, a city needs good bike infrastructure like this bike lane here for a bike share system to really work. But what really works is when a bike infrastructure system, a bike network in the city is developed and grows in conjunction with the bike share system. And it's not just bike lanes, things like density, proximity to amenities, infrastructure. As these things grow and develop, the bike share system should grow and develop around it as well. And it's also so important to think of bike share as an extension of the city's transit system. It really is a way of getting people around. And so if you think of bike share not as an addition or as a bonus or a nice to have in the summertime, but as a fundamental part of the city's transit system, that makes a huge difference.
But of course, the city is always changing, and the needs of the users are changing, and the demands of users are changing. Most recently, people were requesting and wanting the system to be year-round, and so they made upgrades to the system, such as adding slip-proof strips to the pedals, making sure that the tires had studs in them, also clearing snow from the stations to make sure that it was built for the winter. That level of care being taken and attention being paid to Bixi makes it feel like an essential piece of transportation in the city and not just a summertime fun thing.
Mistake number 4 is not paying enough attention to location. If there's one golden rule of bike share systems, it's probably location, location, location. The research says the best locations are those around busy metro stations, bus stops, shopping districts, tourist areas, universities. But we too often see cities putting docking stations in bikes in places where it's convenient, where the docking station won't get in the way of automobiles, where it won't disrupt any car parking, any place that's easy to put and not necessarily where it's best to put the bikes. Now, all bike and scooter share systems need to redistribute bikes and scooters through the system to make it function. But I sometimes worry that private operators are often redistributing bikes to the more profitable locations and maybe not the places that are most in need of them. That's also why I think it's difficult to only rely on private operators for these systems. Without strong incentives in place to ensure that the operators are serving as transit and not just a profit opportunity for out-of-country companies to make a buck, then I also think the system is not doing what it can do or what it has the potential to do.
Having a bike nearby is pretty much one of the most important parts of having a functional bike share system. And I think the city of Montreal did a very good job of making sure that was the case. When you walk around Montreal, there's always a bike share station or Bixi station nearby. And that's actually because the parking authority was responsible for setting up Bixi, which is a little strange, but does make sense when you consider that the parking authority is responsible for all the land and space. And so having a bike share system being in close collaboration or created by the city, again, gives you benefits like this of making sure that the bikes are always put in a location that is beneficial for the end user. And that even extends to the metro system, right? The metro system is the backbone of transportation within the city, and being able to take a Bixi to and from a metro station really reduces the amount of overall trip time that it does take to get to your final destination.
Mistake number 5, thoughtless growth and expansion. Remember those photos from about a decade ago when those big bike share systems got started in China and they grew like crazy and then suddenly went bankrupt, leaving mountains of unused bicycles discarded in landfills? Yeah, those were awful, weren't they? I think those images really put a chill on the industry for a long time, but there's an easy way to avoid those problems, and that is just being thoughtful and careful about growth and expansion. Systems need to grow in ways that are focused on users and giving users better experiences and making the system an important part of their lives. It's a difficult thing to do, especially these days when every penny that gets spent on anything in a city is under a microscope, but balanced growth is the key to making sure these systems thrive over the long run.
If you look around here, you'll often notice Bixi trucks moving bikes from one location to another part of the city, making sure that the bikes don't get all pushed to one side of the system. They really go out of their way to make sure that the system is well balanced and that there's almost always a bike available and a dock available to drop off your bike throughout the day. And so that again goes to show the importance of synergy within the system to make sure that the bike share system is actually useful.
Mistake number 6 is not sweating the small stuff. It's often the little things that can make or break a system. Little things like making sure the app doesn't suck. Well, the researchers didn't use that language, but I did. And mostly municipal operators, you're out there against these app makers from private companies that are great. So make sure your app doesn't suck. If your city has a transit app, make sure the bike share system is integrated into that transit app. Having to use 2 different apps to get your destination is a total pain. Make sure the system collects data and is sharing it and using it in constructive ways. The only way the system can grow is if people understand the system, if the operators know where the bikes are, who's using them, where they need to go. So make sure the data collection is done well and is shared. For private operators, make sure the regulatory system in the city is dynamic, that it can change as much as it needs to as things are learned, as new operators come in. This tech is changing so quickly that we're getting all new ideas all the time. Make sure the regulatory system can adapt to all of that. And perhaps most importantly of all is making sure the bikes are redistributed through the system smartly and in an efficient way. Seriously, these little things can make or break a system. And a lot of this comes down to making sure you think about users. A lot of times it's easy to get wrapped up in what's easiest for the operator to do, but keep the focus on users and making sure the system works for them.
Sweating the small stuff is incredibly important when you're making a bike share system, especially when you're implementing a new system into a city. It's a delicate thing. The attitudes and the habits behind car culture are well entrenched, whereas the attitudes behind bike share system are still very new. You're watching a YouTube video about bike share. Most people aren't doing that. Most people, when they encounter a bike share system, it's a new experience for them. So making sure that every part of the process is well considered and is easy to use. Sweating the small things can turn somebody from a person who uses the system once to somebody who uses it as a regular part of their commute.
Mistake number 7 is not getting buy-in from citizens. Now, it takes work to get these systems to become part of the city, especially when they're new. Some people are not going to like them. They take up space on streets, and car drivers, they feel entitled to every inch of public space in a city. Some people don't like the look of them. Some people don't like seeing them cluttering up sidewalks. Remember when City Bike launched in New York?
Now look at a city whose best neighborhoods are absolutely, begrimed.
But when they do work, they can become an inseparable part of the city's identity. You see this in places like City Bike in New York, Bixi in Montreal. It's difficult to imagine the city now without them, even though these systems are still relatively new. Now, of course, this happens when a system works really well and people use it and it becomes part of their lives. But operators can also do a lot of things too. They can get involved in city life. In some cities, you see bike share systems offering free access, free transportation to events and festivals. They offer promotions, contests. They just get involved in the city in a broader way. And that is one of the keys, I think, to making these systems an inseparable part of the identity of a city.
Citizen buy-in is incredibly important. It's the users that are paying for it, right? It's the tax dollars that are typically paying for a system like this. So making sure that the taxpayers are excited about what they're paying for goes a long way to making sure that people actually end up using it and enjoying the system. And Bixi has that in spades. I think that it's in a unique position. It was a system that was created by the city. I think that has led to a lot of pride within Montreal. People love Bixi here. It is something that is well loved by most people in the city. But it's not saying that can't happen in any other city. But I think when you have these problems and these challenges, the benefit of solving a problem or challenge with your fellow, citizens, or your fellow people, your neighbors, the people that you live with, is that it allows to be buy-in into the solution.
Mistake number 8 is thinking we have all of the answer. Now, it would be easy for cities or bike share operators to think that they know what they're doing. But in the big context of our cities, bike sharing is still so new, it just feels like a newborn still. And I'd say we're even in the midst of a big transition in mobility in our cities that we're just getting started on. There's innovations happening all the time. And so the cities and the operators that think that way, that keep looking for new answers, that keep trying new things, that keep innovating, I think those are the ones that are going to succeed in the long run.
Thinking that all the answers are found is just a mistake waiting to happen. When it comes to any system, anything that's put into place, things are going to shift and change over time. And that's what Bixi has done really well, is by continuing to change, adapt, and iterate over what's working, changing things that aren't working. Bixi has been able to stay relevant and stay useful and increase ridership over the years. From implementing winter riding, or the addition of more and more e-bikes to the system, making it more and more accessible for people. Bixi is doing its best to not rest on its laurels, and it's why it's a system that's successful and well loved by the city that it's in.
So that's it for today. Of course, there's a lot more we could look at. We didn't really get into ownership structures. Bixi, for example, is a nonprofit that's owned by the city, whereas other systems are public-private partnerships, and others still are just owned by municipalities. We could have looked at that. We could also look at the right mix of bikes versus scooters. I think that would be really interesting. And I'd love someday to look at China, because the scale of bike share in China is just on another level, and that would be fascinating to look into. So let me know if you like this video. Maybe there's more in the future about bike share. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.